Hi, everyone. It's Kelly from the Hub here today with Pastor Jim. There are two things. Yes, we have the same color on. We did not call each other. And he is no less of a pastor because he's wearing a t-shirt, so be kind. It's a vacation day, and Pastor Jim was nice enough to be able to see us even on a vacation day. So, hello.
Hello. But it's a kind of a different vacation because, the background is really my dining room.
Right, we're in a total different geography.
Yes. So my vacation wasn't necessarily about going away, going somewhere else. It's one of these virtual vacations, and it's
I know it's not the
different.
same.
I'm just gonna say it's different, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all right. So I had to get all that stuff out of the way because I know all the viewers are like, do they call each other? I mean, we do, but not about our clothes.
Well, but the other thing too is he less of a pastor? He doesn't have the right garb on.
Right. And that's one of those things where he's still the same Pastor Jim that you know and love. Just imagine, or you could make your own collar and just put it up to the screen and then now look, he's a real pastor now. So see, if you didn't know how those little collar things worked, that's how they work. So we were, of course, I say this every time, we were chatting before this, and we got to this interesting thing. So Pastor Jim posted something this past weekend about, I think you posted it yesterday, about something that, yeah, one of those, about something that they, like an activity that they did at church, and we were talking about how I thought it was really cool. And so we actually wanted to give you like the behind the scenes of that, how that sermon and conversation sort of came about, and why it was so like moving for both of us and for everybody who was there. And and now hopefully you guys will all think the same thing. So it starts out that they built a church. So I will seed the conversation with that, and then Pastor Jim will just tell us all about the rest of it. Sure, so you built a church. How does that even start?
We built a church on Sunday, and quite frankly, it was I don't know if other pastors, or if you're a pastor, how he or she prepares their sermons, but oftentimes I really have no idea what I'm saying until I get there Sunday morning and how it's going to work. But for me, this particular sermon had been stewing in my head for a couple of days, but it never really came together until Saturday afternoon. And I was reading the text from Matthew that talks about Peter and Jesus and the disciples, and I thought, we're going to build a church. We're going to build a church on Sunday morning in our own worship service. And the story from Matthew goes something like this. I'm going to paraphrase it. So Jesus is with his disciples, and the disciples are talking to Jesus about how the Pharisees and other religious leaders of the day have, tried to tell Jesus, who he is and this and that and whatever ways they wanted to say it. And Jesus looks directly to the disciples that are there and says, and who do you say that I am? And I can just imagine Jesus there in the midst of wherever they are, whether it's along the shoreline or in a field somewhere or off in a corner in a town somewhere, and just going, and who do you say that I am? And Simon, hold on to that name, Simon, the bravest of all of them, says, well, you're the Messiah. You're the Son of the living God. And Jesus affirms that with Simon and says, and you didn't learn that from other people. You learned that from your relationship with God. I will now name you Peter. And henceforth, from thereafter in the text, he's referred to Peter or Simon Peter. And the reason he's given the name Peter is the word Peter in Greek means rock or stone.
Right, and if you know some of your church history, or you've been to places where they've taught you some church history, Peter becomes like the rock of the church. He's like the founder of how it all does. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what Jesus says.
Yeah.
So on you, I will build my church. I will build the church. Now, I don't know about you, Kelly, and you, our viewers, but what I know about Peter, I'm kind of surprised that the church still stands. Because Peter is one of those guys who's got a ton of questions, who kind of messes things up quite a bit. He opens his mouth and then inserts his foot, and yet the church is built on Peter. But really, it's not built on Peter. It's built on Peter being able to say that Jesus is the Son of the living God. So the church is built on that stability, not on Peter's worthiness. Because God already knows Peter's worthy. God and they already have the faith in Peter.
Right, whether he like exhibits those, whatever those qualities are, yeah.
So how this translated for us at Bergstrasse in worship on Sunday was that I went to my garden and I had a bucket full of stones and rocks from my garden. And as people came to worship on Sunday, I just said, we're going to build a church. Take a rock, put it on the pile, and we're going to build a church. And of course, there was at least one or two that says, can't we throw it at you?
Right. There's always those kids.
There's always those kids, yeah. And I'm glad that I have some of those kids.
Right.
But it was interesting to watch because the people who were working at our door as people were coming in were saying, you got to go get a rock and you got to build a church. And it was like, there was excitement building in all of this. And I was like, I had no idea what was going on. Now you might ask, how did it turn out?
Right, because like all I want to know is, what does it look like? I mean, I saw the picture.
You got to go look me up on Facebook. And I'm not telling you, got to go look up. But the reality is what I told people is I said, and this is how I began my sermon, just talking about the stone that you picked up. What can you tell me about it? And they started telling me, well, it was this color or that color, or it was caked in mud, or there was dirt on it. Some of them had moss on it, and they were all different shapes, and some were really small, and some were really big. And they were talking about, that, and I said, and each one of those stones is you. I said, each one of you who will proclaim that Jesus is Messiah and Jesus is the Son of the living God. The church is built on you in the same way that the first church was built on Peter, who was a little rough around the edges, kind of dirty.
Right. Wasn't loved by everybody. People thought he was a bit of a whack job.
Kind of messy.
Yep.
But here's the thing about here's what else I pointed out to the church that we built on Sunday morning in worship. It wasn't set up that it was perfectly shaped. It doesn't have 4 walls. I think it probably has about 24 walls.
Yeah. Yeah, let's just say this. It ain't pretty.
It ain't pretty. And it's, over here's a low part. Here's a little bit of a high part, and then a little bit lower here. It's an assortment of colors. It's a lot of browns and golds, just like the people that are there. And I feel that too often that the image that we have of church, that it has to be perfect.
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 Right, not just perfect, Sunday morning perfect. Yeah. That's where you wear your best clothes. There's rules, right. And
And for me, I think that has been a challenge for many churches and for many people who are part of congregations, and is that we live under this ideal that church needs to be perfect, and yet none of us are.
Well, the church has to be perfect, and only perfect people go.
That's when I need to question then for us is, who do you say that Jesus is?
Right.
And I know there's people out there saying, well, Jesus is perfect. Yeah, no, Jesus was not perfect. Jesus was also human. Jesus messed up a few times. But Jesus also saw that imperfectness as a gift.
Right, and saw in Peter what Peter didn't see. All right, I am no theologian, but I know that Peter knows he was not perfect. He talks about that.
Yeah.
And then when he's given this, like, well, he sees it as a burden in the beginning. He's like, I can't, there's no way I could handle this job. Thanks a lot, friend of mine, but what am I supposed to do with this?
How many people do you know this is, I can't do church. I can't do church because it's da. And it's like, it's not about that. It's not about that at all. It's about loving our neighbor. It's about loving one another. It's about building each other up. It's about caring. It's about using my imperfections to show someone else that they are enough, that they are perfect for it. Each one of those stones that was a part of our church that we built on Sunday, you know what the coolest part about all of it was?
What?
Every stone was connected.
Right, no, right.
There was not a single stone that was off by itself. But every piece of that stone, every stone was connected one to the other. And that's what church is.
No matter how it looked, it fit.
Exactly.
And it doesn't have to fit perfect. It just has to be connected.
It has to be connected. The greatest gift that I received on Sunday from my church builders in my congregation, they want to continue building their church.
That's pretty special.
And I said to them, I said, absolutely you can. Absolutely you can. And we will. And I told him, I said, had I thought of this and earlier, and it would have been in a different time, I would have all sent you a message to ask you to bring a rock from your own house, from your own garden, or wherever, or a stone. So I said, next week's your chance. So I won't be with them in worship on Sunday, but I am so anxious to see what their church looks like next week. And I also said, and by the way, the bucket still has a couple stones in it. So if there are visitors here next week, you need to tell them how they are also connected to this church that we're building and how we want them to be connected.
Yeah, that's a good story.
Church is just a group of imperfect people just wanting to love and be loved.
Yeah. Thank you, Pastor Jim.
Thank
it was
you.
Fun to chat.
As always. As always.
See you, friends.
See ya. Have a good week.